The following is a presentation of Muddy River News.
Welcome to the Abbey, a Quincy tradition. With 6 big screens, a new larger kitchen, and now more seating capacity, the Abbey is the place to be before, during, and after the big game. Come enjoy fan favorite appetizers, steaks, burgers, and a variety of daily food and drink specials. Can't join us? Carryout is available too. Now with a convenient drive-up window to better serve you. 1736 Spring in Quincy. Opens at 3 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday. Come join all your friends at the Abbey, a Quincy tradition.
The Liquor Booth is your home for a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits. The Liquor Booth has 2 locations in Quincy, 3520 Broadway and 1500 North 12th Street. The Liquor Booth, where it's always happy hour.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Muddy. Today is, of course, Coffee Talk, and it's a very special Coffee Talk because we have another guest. And I will say, you have big shoes to fill when it comes to guests on Coffee Talk. Our last guest was, of course, Mr. Ryan Hincamper, which I have no doubt that you're gonna fill those just fine. So we have with us today Jason Parrott, and he is the assistant
planning director for the city.
Assistant planning director for the City of Quincy.
And today's TIF extraordinaire.
TIF extraordinaire. So we brought him on because last week, if you watched, we had a lot of questions about the TIF. And this all stems from new discussion about a new TIF district, which is German.
The name is still, right now it's being called the German Village District. That name could change because the other ones have the boring names of TIF East and TIF West.
TIF
so you
East
could
and
have
TIF
a direction for that too, but that's still in the
works. For this discussion, we'll call it Germantown TIF
Yeah,
District.
because I think that's kind of what we've referred to it to start. And the reason that, of course, you're here, one, I'm very dense when it comes to TIF, and I like to have a little information, a little background about things that are going on in the city, of course, but another thing that I'm very big on, if anybody's listening, is transparency. And I think that one of the things we've talked about is anytime TIF gets brought up, it's almost intimidating, overwhelming, because no one is really clear. Even some folks in actually taking advantage of these, the TIF or the funds. Some people can't explain it very well. So that's why you're here.
There we go. Hopefully I can do that for you.
Okay, so you're going to give us a TIF 101 explanation about what it is.
We'll try to do that.
Okay, so let's start with just high level, what it is, why it's there, and kind of what the desired benefits are, right?
So a TIF is a tool that the state provides to cities. And the easiest way to think about a TIF is the goal is to reduce blight, reduce vacancies. If you drive down certain areas, especially if you're driving in the downtown here, much fewer vacancies than years ago because there have been 2 active TIFs. We'll get kind of into the funding of that and how that works in a little bit.
Okay.
But then when you look at the area that we're talking about, the State Street area, the 8th Street area, you see more vacancies, you see more commercial buildings that are run down, you can see the blight in that area. This is a tool that the state provides to municipalities to try to address that by saying, we're going to let you capture a different stream of funding and then use that to either work on infrastructure, you can work on private development, or you can work on improvements. An example of that is the downtown rental rehab program for apartments that are upper story apartments.
Okay.
You can use these funds. You can't build new. That's one of the things that's key with TIF. You can't do new construction with it. You could do infrastructure. A lot of times for the city in the past, it was fixing up a street, doing a streetscape, doing parking lots. After the TIF was the TIF West and the TIF East, and we're going to use these names every so often here, as they started to grow and generate revenue, they had more money to do other types of projects like the downtown rental rehab program, like some of the agreements that have been made with the 531 Hampshire, the proposed hotel there. But it takes money to get to that point.
Okay.
And the way a TIF works is, let's say you have a building that's in a TIF district. It's valued at $100,000. Those taxes are collected by the city, the county, the school district, John Wood Community College, and a couple of others. If a TIF is established, the value of that property is frozen at $100,000. But each year it's still going to grow. Let's say it grows 1% in value. So the next year it's worth $101,000. All of the taxing bodies will still be able to collect their taxes on that $100,000. But on that $1,000 that's new, that revenue all goes into the TIF fund. So
the entire $1,000.
Or that's the taxed on the $1,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what would normally be going about 60% to the school, 14% to the city, to the county, all of that goes into the TIF district. So that is the portion that the schools and the county are essentially giving up.
Right.
Is just on that increment.
Okay.
So if it goes up the next year to $102,000, that extra $2,000, that the taxes generated by that $2,000 goes into the TIF.
Okay.
The $100,000 is still going to the school, to the county, to the park district. So what they're doing is they're saying, we understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to spur development in these areas by using that increment. That's why at first, when the first TIF was formed in 1998, it was going to take forever. It takes a lot of money. So the city had to put in money into that TIF fund
to seed it,
before they could start doing projects. Once that TIF is seeded and as it continues to grow, then you can start seeing the projects being done. TIF West, for example, it's about the taxable value on it that all the districts, all the school and everybody can still get is $5.5 million.
Okay.
But the actual EAV on it is $13.5 million.
Okay.
So the taxes collected by that $8 million in increment, that is what's going into the TIF, and that's how these more projects have been able to be going on.
Okay.
So real quick breakdown.
Yeah, because Ash and Britt, we need to you did a very, very good job. I will say it was very, very good.
That was amazing,
Yeah.
actually. You've been the clearest person to break this
100%.
down to me because I've asked a lot of people. And so since this is coffee talk and we're talking to our coffee audience, I want to compare it to our cup of coffee.
There you go.
So last time I said that, their taxes were frozen, and they're not. Everyone still has to fill up their cup of the coffee to whatever it is. Now, whenever the TIF starts, though, that's where, say it stops right here,
Yep.
1998, like
Yes.
you said. So then we fill up the rest of our cup with the frothy foam cream stuff that Ashley likes.
Yeah.
And we siphon that off, right?
Yes.
And we're putting that creamy goodness into something else.
Yes.
But everyone is still filling their coffee cup.
Yeah, they're getting all of the taxes. The school, the county are getting it all the way up to the froth.
To the froth.
And then the froth, what is collected on the froth, that is going into the TIF fund, the taxes on that. So what the others are giving up is the froth. They're saying you can use those tax dollars on that part. We're still getting all the way up to the coffee line.
Okay.
But the froth is where that money, the money generated by the froth, is going into that TIF fund that can be used for TIF related projects.
What was the first? You said 1998 was the first TIF, right?
The first
was
TIF
that East or West?
That was West. TIF West was formed in 1998, and then TIF East was formed in 2010.
And they're all
They're
kind
all
of the
supposed
downtown.
to go. Yeah, they're. And
So can we just say them for both, just for this conversation purpose? Can we call them the downtown TIF and the German TIF? Is that
what
okay?
you can do too is, because they both now have the city extended west, so they both have the same ending date of 2033. So both of those TIFs would end at the same time, 2033.
Okay.
Has the 1998 one been renewed?
That was the one that was extended. It was extended for, I believe, 10 years.
Are they generally always renewed?
That actually takes legislative action. The state legislature has to approve an extension. So they go for 23 years. You can request an extension, but you have to have the state sign off on it. You can actually request a second, but that seems to be pretty rare. Generally, the state would allow you to do one extension, but it does require the legislature. It's not just something you can do locally. You have to get legislative approval to extend it beyond the original 23 years.
When they're renewed, real quick, so is it say it's renewed, the 1998 one was renewed. Is it renewed at that tax rate baseline
it just basically pushes the years back. So whatever that's starting.
So the downtown TIF right now is giving us the tax rate from 1998?
Yes, whatever that was, the value was frozen at. And that's why now when you look at, if you look at the two TIFs combined, their original value is about, I'm doing math in my head here, about $11 million, but their actual EAV, that was their EAV, their actual EAV is roughly $22 million.
Okay.
So that
gonna ask.
increment is where the funding is coming in for the TIF.
Okay.
Would the increment happen regardless, though, because with time and, isn't property taxes going up no matter what? Like that increment didn't just happen because of the TIF, right?
I think what you could look at with the TIF and looking at the downtown is, do you think that The West TIF, and I bring that up because we've looked at that, has increased over the time since '98 at a 4% increase on average each year. The question would, and that's due to a lot of the improvements that are made. The question would be, do you think that those properties would go up by that same 4% if there wasn't that investment going on?
Right.
That's how you look at that. You think you'd be getting, because in a lot of these areas, if they were considered blight, it's possible you could be seeing negative growth each year. That instead of the rate going up 1%, it could have been going down 1%, and that's why it was picked up for a TIF.
Do property taxes ever really go down, though?
Well, you're talking the assessed value of a property. The assessed property of a value, or value of a property can go down.
Yeah.
Whether if the tax rate increases, like if the city and everybody's rates increase, you could be paying more in taxes. But if the assessment is going down, there is a chance you could be paying less. But that means your property is worth
assessed,
less.
Yeah, it's assessed at less. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you are talking about, the schools and park districts, and I do have another question to go along with this, but when you say that they're willing to give it up, so how is the decision made to create a TIF, and who's involved in that?
Really, the starting point is the city just looking and deciding, do we need to look at a TIF district? A lot of times it's been brought forward by business owners and such to say, hey, you know what, if you created a TIF in this area, it would make it a lot easier for investment to happen in this area, because I'm going to invest in this building. As a result, the sidewalk could be repaired, or there could be a parking lot repaired too. So that's kind of the opportunity there.
That's kind of like a well, duh, though. Is that not trying to be rude on your part,
no.
but like, isn't that like, well, duh?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. When you,
Of course, like I would want.
when you're looking
Well,
at
and
that,
that's where
but you're
then
looking
how
at the
are you-
sacrifice
Yeah,
of what we're giving up here, and this isn't. And so
Nothing against. Yeah, sorry, I was just.
Well,
like,
and the idea would be is if there wasn't that incentive to build up the parking lot or the sidewalk, would the developer be interested in the project?
Sure.
Sometimes it's but for that infrastructure work is the project wouldn't go forward, but for that contribution, you could say.
so the developer won't.
The developer might say, I can't afford to do this project if you're not going to work on some of this infrastructure.
Understood.
Be it, an example is at 8th and Jersey, the extension of water and sewer lines. If that had to be on them, they may have said, we can't do it but for the city getting involved in that process. So that's an example of where if there's no TIF there, the developer may say, wow, that's another.
Could that not come, though, from a general fund?
You'd have to convince the city council to provide that money.
And with TIF, you don't have to?
No, the TIF still gets approved by the city council. A TIF request would come forward. A good example is recently the downtown rehab program there was one participant in the 600 block, or the 6th Street block, and they put forward their proposal. The city council has to approve it.
Okay.
So it's not just an agreement is reached and, oh, hey, here's your TIF funding. It does have to go to the council. What you'd be doing then is going to the council and saying, instead of fixing streets, instead of doing something else, we want you to repair the sidewalk in front of this potential development. If you can get a majority of the council to do that, you would be able to have that funding. If not, they may say, well, you're taking money away from street repairs. You're taking money away from this. Whereas TIF, it can only be for these certain infrastructure type projects. So it's more designated that you can't use TIF to just go out and fix streets. You can't use TIF to just go out and fill potholes. They have to be related to infrastructure and such, like as parking lots and such.
Okay.
Is TIF taking away from the general fund then?
No, TIF is a totally separate fund.
But aren't you frothing that cream out of the general fund?
There
And
is
when
a
I say
portion.
general fund,
No,
I mean the thing that all of Quincy benefits from.
The city would have received about 14% if let's say the TIF district generated $10,000 in 1 year. The city would be eligible for 14% of that, and that would go into, and that would pay for areas, I believe it's such as pensions and such.
What about schools and parks?
That I don't know how. I mean,
isn't that part of the general fund that it's kind of taking away
no, you've
from?
got the school. Well, the school district, they have their own budget that they would receive. They would receive a portion of the froth that they would spend, and I don't know how the school district would spend it, and then the park district would, because the froth would have, if there was no TIF, that money would all have been spread out as it normally would.
But so you're saying the froth you can take out for the park and the schools from that TIF froth?
No. So the froth is just earmarked for
the TIF.
Okay.
And if I'm understanding right, and this is kind of one of the questions, there is no money taken out for pension, school district, parks coming out of that froth.
Yeah,
There's
and that's
nothing.
where it could have been. Had there been no TIF, essentially with no TIF, there's no froth. But if you think about it in the sense of you have that froth area, you go ahead and say, okay, the city gets about 14% of the property tax bill. So that portion would go to the city.
Yeah.
The school gets about 60% of the property tax bill. So
Okay.
that portion would go to the school. The parks get about, 10%, let's say.
Okay.
That would have gone to them. So they would have used that money how they could. For the city, those dollars would go towards pensions or I
municipal
believe the library
services,
is one. There's a very limited actual number
Okay.
of where the property tax revenue goes to. The biggest, I believe 2/3 of it goes to pensions of the actual property tax bill.
Okay, but
for the city.
So my question, I guess, is their like budgets obviously raised through time, and say they come to the city with their budget, their proposed budget. We'll use the park district for example, and say we have a proposed budget of $4 million, which is I don't know, I'm just making up numbers.
Yep.
$2 million more than last year. Who makes up for that difference?
That
Would it
is-
be people paying technically outside of the TIF? Like people that aren't in the TIF?
It could
would
be
have
what the parks, the schools and such, basically they have to make that decision and say, we believe the future investment, we believe seeing that increment of TIF West going from 5 million to 13 million. So in the future, our tax base in that area alone will be 13 million, not 5 million. They see it as that is the potential. It's a long-term, TIF is a long play.
Yeah.
Which, okay,
essentially.
Yeah.
now
And
that you
that's
say
the
that,
key.
I did read, okay, so I read when TIF boundaries touch, that they can tap in or dip into the boundaries from before. So TIF East and West are touching, right? So the downtown TIF gets to kind of play on each other, right?
Yeah, and go ahead.
And then so the Germantown is going to be touching the downtown TIF district, am I correct?
It proposed would be touching the
So
East
would they be
District.
able to immediately dip into the funds from the downtown people?
Yes, and that's one of the key things with TIF is if all of a sudden when they started TIF West from scratch, there was no money, it was not generating a lot. So the city had to put in motor fuel tax, the city had to put in capital to build that up. And over the years, as more projects happened, the value went up, the TIF was making up that money. If we were to say both TIF districts, TIF East and TIF West are gone, and the German Village TIF is on its own, it would have to generate enough revenue over time to be able to actually do a project.
But you just isn't
because
TIF supposed to happen with time, like you
20
said?
like 23 years is
and that's the thing.
So
It would-
why I guess would they? Isn't it? I guess the downtown people that have taken the time and put in the time with this, is that fair to them that they're getting their TIF taxes tapped into from the Germantown people already?
The question would be, I mean, if they felt that was something that they could go to their council members and they could say, I don't want my money. But they have seen the impact that it can have here.
Yeah.
And they can say, you know what, if we have this area has had such an impact from it and we get this area, it's only going to do good for Quincy. It's going to raise the valuation. It's going to have more projects coming into town. It's going to have more housing opportunities because you could start off with the downtown rental rehab program. Instead of just being focused down here in this part of the downtown, you could start having applications come in from the German Village. That is one of the keys to being contiguous, is being able to say, yeah, we have this funding available. We can start doing this work down here and try to get you guys from the blight that you're seeing here to be looking more like the downtown. I believe one of the business owners and property owners was at the council meeting. He said, remember downtown 15 years ago and look at it now and look at how it's different.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at for there. But no, it is true. I mean, you would have people who have been.
There's only so much TIF though, right? Like,
Yes.
I mean,
There's
That was
only-
another question
yes,
of mine,
there's
yeah.
only-
you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to share. I mean, humans are humans. Like, if I'm putting this much into whatever, I'm not really wanting to share. It's also, I guess this is also about personal investment. Like, I know you said it's for the good of the community. Yes, but it's about personal investment.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, a good
Well, yeah, let's
example
be
is
real.
the
Yeah.
recent
The good of-
the recent downtown rental rehab program. Only one person applied.
and
Many
so only
others
one
could
person
have.
benefits from
So
it.
yeah, one person, but others could have at the same time.
Yeah.
Every single.
Could they have though?
Yes, and anyone if they had a building and they wanted to renovate their property at that time, No one else.
Did they know about it? Was this openly?
It's advertised and everything, because being coming through the city, it has to go through advertising and such, and they have to submit a sealed bid and everything like that. So it goes through that process. It's similar to the small rental rehab program that can be in other parts of the city, but it must go through that whole process. So the one person applied, but others could have.
Okay.
And so in the same sense, somebody else could have come and complained and said, I don't want my money going to that project.
Yeah.
But it went before the city council and it was approved by the council.
So for the brew house townhomes, I think is what they're being called,
Yes.
right? So there's TIF money that's earmarked for infrastructure, pavement, sidewalks, something like that,
Yes.
right? So I think it mentioned like $230,000 for something, whatever. Now, does all of that come out of the TIF fund, or do they have to match it, or how does that work?
Well, the match is what they're putting into the project. So their investment in the project is the $7.5 million.
Okay.
And I know the numbers have changed, but what the city what the city's TIF is going into is the streetscape along 8th Street,
Okay.
and then the extension of the water and sewer lines.
Okay.
There's a separate amount of funding from ARPA that is going into that project also.
Okay.
But what ARPA is doing is it is covering, if you put in a sprinkler system, you get building permit fees waived.
Okay.
And you get water and connection fees waived.
Okay.
ARPA is supplementing that. So basically, they come up, they get their building permit fees. Our office is the one that issues them. We don't take money from them. ARPA
pays that.
us for that.
Okay.
But the vast majority of those dollars are TIF dollars. The ARPA funding is, and I'm
measly,
$50,000 or
Okay.
something comparatively to the
Okay.
rest of
So
that.
do we know what's in the TIF right now left?
Money wise,
Yeah.
like an amount?
I do not at this moment, but I don't track that. The city has that right offhand. I mean, because once there's no more TIF monies, there's no more agreements, there's no more, and then you have to wait for it to replenish.
Okay. So then that was another one of my questions. So, okay, real quick, back to the $7.5 million investment.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have a TIF project, my investment that's already been made is what's considering the match of that. So they don't have to come up with the additional funds.
No, what they're looking at is what they're really wanting to see is the private versus public investment in that. So,
Okay.
and let's just say, and that might be wrong, but let's say the total amount for the water, the sewer, and the sidewalk is $600,000, and then the investment in the project is $7.5 million. So you're saying you'd present to the council, this is about 11-to-1 investment, private versus public. That's just information provided the council, and then the council decides whether they feel that is worthy of being supported or not.
Okay.
If the council said no, then you can't just give them TIF. The council is the final say on whether a project gets the TIF.
Okay.
Okay. So then when you're talking about, so I know the advantages, and of course everybody wants to see Quincy, what is Bob's favorite saying? Rising tide raises all swimmers or something. I don't even know what it is, but he tells me it all the time. It's one of my favorite things because, if we're all getting better, of course we're all getting better. However, I think, and I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here, I think there are losers in this.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them would be almost the residents who are in these blighted areas, who are going to see their property taxes rise. And I'm not going to.
There's no property taxes rise.
Not even on residential.
No, because remember, there's still all the taxes they're just taxed on what the assessed valuation
Everyone in the
is.
TIF, not just commercial.
The TIF, there's no increase. No one pays any more because they're in a TIF.
But
the
they will pay
taxes
more.
are diverted. Some of the taxes are diverted because of that.
But they're not going to pay more than.
If your house was valued at $100,000 and you're a residential property in the TIF, the only way you're paying more in taxes is if your value goes up.
Which it
and-
will.
Isn't that what the
That's
purpose
the goal
is?
of this.
Yeah, and
so that's what I'm
that is.
saying.
Okay.
That is.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. When you're a resident, if I'm living at 8th and whatever Jersey, let's say, and property tax, everybody's making improvements with this TIF money, which I as a resident don't see the TIF money, right? I may see some infrastructure improvements or whatever, but a lot of it is being used to rehab, buildings that are already there, commercial properties. Eventually, those property taxes are going to raise, and I'm still paying.
Because we're rising out of these blighted conditions.
Right, we're rising out of blighted conditions. So that's one I would say, and I'm not saying because I don't want to over exaggerate something. I don't know the amount. Do you know like how much like a baseline raise in property taxes has happened?
and that's what I was going to say. The assessor's office would determine that.
Okay.
Would one project affect a tax EAV for your property? I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, you look at your own property tax bill in your area. Is it going up every year, kind of by what rate? Then you could say, then that might be what you look at. If it's going to be a greater increase, that would be a question for them. We don't deal with that.
Gotcha.
But that is what you're looking at.
It is a very valid, and this, my goal and Brittany's, and I think yours, I mean, of course, we want to be very transparent, very honest about what this is and why people should or should not. What are, do the benefits outweigh the disadvantages? Yep. And I want to be very clear when we're talking about disadvantages. We're not trying to blow things out of the water or uncover some big hidden conspiracy. But there are some things, and another thing, like I mentioned, pensions. We're very much in the hole as far as pensions go, right? Like 126%.
I
think.
do not know. That's not my realm.
But I think we were, as of 2019, like every household would have to pay like $40,000 just to get caught up, I think. And one thing that when I hear a lot of this, the one thing I hear is more pension money is going to be kind of withheld. Not saying we're not going to capture as much money to go into pensions with the more TIFs we have, right? The less money we're going to get, at least over the next 23 years, and possibly more if there's a renewal.
I guess, and the one way to look at that too would be, is if you're in an area that is considered blighted enough to have a TIF district, you might be seeing declining in EAV. So it might be reduced the amount of money towards that anyway.
Okay.
If you're seeing properties that are continually falling, one year they're at 100,000, the next year they're at 99,000, the next year at 98, they wouldn't be collecting that money anyway. But in this case, it's looking at the long term. If you're starting to see those properties going from 100 to 99 to 98, then all of a sudden a TIF comes in. Now it's 98, 99, 100, 100, 102. In the short term, that money is going into the TIF from the increment. But in the long term, once that TIF expires, then you have such a much higher EAV that you're going to collect. And we've kind of gone back to it, but the TIF West is at 5.5 million in EAV when it was frozen, and its current EAV is 13.5 million.
Okay.
So that's almost tripled the value that the taxes are going to come in, which is going to be when it expires, and it's still got about 10 years on it.
Right.
But when it does, that's a much higher amount.
Okay.
But it all depends on too, is if you look at the properties, what direction they're going in now. If some of these are going down anyway, you wouldn't be seeing the higher payments because the EAV is going down.
So when you said long game, it truly is a long game, because eventually we're going to capture those tax dollars and it's going to be at a significantly higher amount. Okay, so I do understand that. I still have some questions about like the residents and how that's going to be handled. But I think this kind of clears it up a little bit for me. I mean, I still have some questions.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I still feel the same about it. I feel kind of like I'm asking, are we like prioritizing correctly when we advocate for money for, investors improving their properties over parks, schools, pensions, and the things that technically that froth is being withheld from the general fund. And when I say, again, general fund, it's the good of all.
The good of all. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it truly comes down to, because you look at, again, if the properties are continuing to decline and you're continuing to see them lose value, you're losing that on top of it already. So there would be less funding for those types of things as it is if you're seeing those values going down. That is one way to look at it.
I did look at the Adams County like property values. It was like, I think it was 2015 to 2023, and there were nothing but increases. So I guess I don't see the decrease
in the property taxes.
It was all of Adams County. I'll send you this spreadsheet.
Okay.
But it said something where there was pretty much all properties except for there was something that was questionable about it. I don't even want to mention it.
Well, when you go in through, you can look, because we've looked at these from different years, and there are some years where you would see increases, and I believe in this, the first time we looked at this district, I want to say at least a third of them had a decline from the previous year. So the EAV from 22 I believe had dropped from 21, and we've got that, but that's how you're looking at these. But then in previous years, it might have went up too, depending on the climate. So what you'd be doing is for this area, we've looked at every one of those properties, we've mapped them all out, and our map is not set in stone. What we would do is the city, what the goal is for the city to be able to hire a consultant to come in, and they deal with this on a regular basis, and they know what to look for. And they may come in and say, your map is off. We can focus on this area over here. We need to go to this area over here. This map was just generated in-house, and they're going to be looking at property values. They're going to be looking at blight. They're going to be looking at
where
vacancy.
the opportunities are.
And so what we've done is we've tried to get an idea as much commercial as possible. The goal is to cut residential out of a TIF.
That was my question.
There's a certain limit on how many residential properties you can even. That's why it kind of looks such a strange thing. You're trying to put more commercial in and take out more residential. You don't.
Would apartments be considered commercial
and that's
or
one of the
residential?
things we actually would rely on the consultant to determine that, because the tax the assessor's office is if an apartment has 6 or more units, it's deemed commercial even though it's residential. So it could factor in that way as well.
Okay. All right.
But a duplex would not be.
No, a duplex would be seen as residential. So that's the goal, is to have fewer residential properties in a TIF and more commercial in a TIF.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, this definitely clears. I mean, I think it clears it up. It doesn't necessarily make everybody feel comfortable with it, but
it
I think
it up.
no, and I'm kind of included because I think I just can't decide if it's okay, if 23 years is too long for me, like, or even 10 or what,
But it
because I
isn't
think
23. I mean, they can start making improvements right away, right?
No, well,
but what I'm saying is
length of the TIF,
capturing the final
overall
amount of the
essence.
tax dollars. So for the regular people in Quincy like me, who aren't in a TIF district, we're going to have to wait until that kind of expires to see the benefit of it. So it's kind of like, what would you sacrifice now to get more tax dollars to go towards pensions, to go towards municipal services and infrastructure in the long run? I still have questions about residents and how decisions are made, and kind of how do we eliminate the factor of favoritism, or because in a small town like Quincy, it is undeniable.
Well, and that is one of the things we hear a lot, is it's the picking of winners and losers. And one of the things is if somebody brings forward a proposal, it's not just a department head that's making that selection. It's going to the city council. And that's the important thing to think about it, is that these decisions are going to the city council, and the city council is deciding whether or not this project should be funded with the TIF money. So that's one thing we hear. Another we've heard is, why not do TIFs all over the place? Why not?
Yeah, that was my question.
One of the things is, you really want to focus it. There are communities, and I have a background being in Iowa in my previous job. There are communities that the entire city is a TIF.
Yeah, that was
well. Then you've basically
wanted.
cut off that additional funding for every single thing. One thing that Quincy has done is really tried to keep it tight, keep it focused to just this smaller area, so that way the rest of the city is still being taxed. That's why you talk about the pensions and you talk about the parks and such. This area encompasses such a small amount compared to the whole amount of the city's taxes. So they're getting the bulk of the taxes are going there. It's a pretty small amount when you're looking at the blocks that are included. I think this TIF is proposed at 14 blocks. TIF West and TIF East are probably about 35, 40 blocks combined. When you compare that with the rest of the city, it's a small amount that is the froth, as we've been calling it throughout.
Yeah.
Things start small, though, and they always get bigger.
Well, and that was my question. Why wouldn't we just put all Quincy in one? I think it makes sense because it would take funds away. But if we did it for a smaller amount of time, I don't know.
Well, the length of time is the 23.
Yeah.
So that's where, and because that's
provided it doesn't get renewed.
Yeah.
Which the 98 one was renewed.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the 98 one was renewed, so they're on the same.
So that would be like 33 years total?
Well, it is lined up with the 2010 one now. So they're both. So it would be. They're both expire in 33. So it would be a 12-year
provided
renewal.
They're not renewed.
12-year renewal
From that one. So
Okay.
both the TIF West and TIF East are set to expire in 33.
Okay. And who decides if they renew? Is
The state the city requests it, and then it has to go through the taxing boxes. That's one of the other things. This request does have to go before the school board. It does have to go before the park
Okay.
board. They all have to. It's not just that the city
that
can
was kind of my
say
question.
we're going
Yeah,
to start
'cause I-
this TIF.
yeah.
They're all taxing bodies. They're all affected by it.
Yeah.
Now, if the taxing bodies decide that they didn't want to do this TIF, the city, there are rules in place where by a larger majority, I'm not sure of the exact count, they would be able to say, yes, we're going to do this, and we can do this anyway. But it takes a super majority to do that.
Gotcha.
That's why initially there have been meetings just with the administration and with like the administration of the school, just in brief, not with the boards themselves, but just say, hey, we're looking at this, and we've been given the indication of, you guys can go ahead and we'll wait and see, because obviously when it comes to them, they have to look out for their constituents also, and they have to weigh the benefits of the increased development.
They're probably
versus
feeling them out too a little
Yeah.
bit now that some of these boards have changed.
Yeah.
A lot of the boards have changed hands, so the decisions have probably changed hands too. So
Yeah.
I would think, like, just in common conversation, you're feeling this out before we bring this proposal.
Yeah.
Which I'm guessing they're feeling good.
Now, I do know that, so like on the school board, so going back to favoritism, so one of the downtown business owners is now the president of the school board, and how does that play out?
That would be a conflict of
Okay.
interest
Yes.
discussion.
Okay.
That's not
yes,
for me.
not for you. But I just wanted to ask, because I think it's
But
really
it could
important to
potential-
understand how how these decisions are being made, and as far as who's benefiting, conflicts of interest, of course. If I wanted to be, a downtown business owner, I know I can go to like realtors or whatever. But do you think, or do you know within the TIF, overall overarching project, if there is like a list of properties that are kind of that are available for sale that are going to be included in this, or will once the map is created?
It's just whatever the map is created. I mean, that'd be a realtor
Can I
question.
add into that?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a little off subject, but this is my new subject
it, yeah.
of interest.
Okay.
Okay. What you were just saying about properties and availability.
Yeah.
The land bank. What do you know about the land
I
bank?
am not involved in the land bank. I am not the
What's
right
the land
person.
bank?
Well, crap.
Yeah.
No, I am not.
Well-
The land bank. I mean, it's a form. It's a board that the easiest way to explain it, at least mine, and like I said, I'm not involved with it, is they try to obtain properties before they get too dilapidated.
So the
Because-
criteria of the property is you don't really.
No.
Okay.
What I work
I
with
know
the,
a little bit about the land
was gonna
bank.
say-
We're going to find somebody that knows a little bit
Yeah,
about
I was
the
gonna
land
say,
bank.
I'm not
I'm
that
wondering,
person.
Okay.
like, would, if somebody, like you just said, conflict of interest, if they were sitting on the land bank board and they maybe were had a vested interest in real estate,
Yeah.
would that be a conflict
I can
of
tell.
interest?
Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you. I work with the Quincy Planning Commission, and what we tell people is if they feel there's some sort of a conflict, for one thing, they have to ask themselves, do I feel conflicted over this? And then we tell them, talk to the city attorney. If you describe the situation to them, if they feel it is a conflict, then you need to declare that conflict.
All right.
That's how we
There you go.
that's how we do it
Yeah.
for the Plan Commission.
Okay.
How other boards and groups do that, I do not know, but that's kind of the easier way to do it. You have to first for yourself and then look at what legal might say, because they might say, well, yes, if you have a particular business interest, it would not be wise for you to participate in this
Gotcha.
discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense. But we'll have to get the
yeah.
next expert on the hook for that one.
On the land bank.
Yeah, right. But I think this has been. I mean, I've
This
learned a
is-
lot,
me
and that
too.
was
Thank you
my
so much.
Yeah, that was my ultimate goal. I think it's really
Learning
helpful.
two girls,
Yeah.
drinking coffee,
Right?
learning about the city,
Well,
the
I
county.
mean, I think it's there's there are a lot of concerns about transparency, and I think one of course our job is to bring the experts like yourself on to kind of talk about this stuff and inform the rest of us on what the hell we don't know, so that there's not a lot of
Well, and that's
it's
the thing.
It's good
is
to clear things up one way or the other.
I appreciate having an opportunity
Yeah.
like this, because it is. I mean, and there's stuff we didn't even get into.
Yeah,
There's stuff
I'm sure.
Because
well, you can come back anytime.
I mean,
Yeah, we'll have round
we're
two.
Sitting,
Yeah.
We're sitting right near one of the biggest, most upcoming uses of the TIF.
Right.
The 6th Street
Promenade.
project.
Yep. Yeah.
We were able to go to the state, and with our grant application, we got $2.4 million. Our match was TIF money.
Yeah.
Would the question would be, would the council have put up that much TIF money to make this a good
viable project,
application,
yeah.
or would we have just had no match to go with?
Isn't it the council's decision? I guess I'm
Yeah, they
confused.
decided to do that, but
Okay.
but without it, would the council have put 1.2 million in general fund into that project
'Cause they would have to
versus
explain
1.2 in TIF? So they'd have had to find the 1.2 million
Yeah.
somewhere else. So that's a good
And then you're
example.
explaining it to the rest of Quincy when this is like, you're like, well, I'm just going to take this money from this section. Are you all okay with it? Right? So, I think in my mind, short-term disadvantages possibly, long-term, hopefully bigger advantages. We'll have to see how that plays out as long as renewals don't keep happening. And as far as property availability and, who gets to be involved and who's making decisions. And I know that we've already had a lot of experience with this with TIF West or East. Oh, okay. So hopefully the process is getting nailed down. I think we will have to kind of wait and see if it does benefit us in the way that we're hoping when the first expires.
And, and truly the next step in this is simply the study.
Yeah.
And how the study comes out will dictate a lot of where it goes forward.
Now the study that's coming in I'm assuming it's someone who's experienced in doing this everywhere else.
The group is PGAV. He did the Midtown Business District.
Okay.
And he worked on the expansion of the enterprise zone. It's a firm that more specializes in this. I mean, there's a lot of questions. Why don't you hire somebody local?
Yeah.
I'm sure they would look at that, but I don't know if the local groups would have as much experience. This person goes when there's a TIF meeting every year at the state level. And I believe actually people from Quincy are signing up for it now. Several people from the city go to learn about the updates on TIF.
Okay.
The person who would do our study is one of them that presents TIF information at the state level. So he is somebody that is prepared. And this is something he does on a regular basis with other communities.
Well, and I think a lot of people, who are saying, why couldn't we do this locally? That goes kind of back into the conflict of interest. So it's like, do we want to spend money with somebody who's a little more unbiased to come in and say, okay, here's where it should be, versus somebody down there who's like, well, I want to include this one.
And he's going to look at and he's going to look at ours and just say, nope, you should have never had your map go down this way.
Yeah.
We're going to take it this direction, and that's how he's going to look. We are estimating it just based on us driving the area, looking at property values, and making sure they're commercial properties.
Now, do you think that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Does the money for the study come out of the existing TIF?
Out of TIF money, yes. So there's nothing out of the general fund for that. It would be paid for. And I believe it's been budgeted to have that $40,000, $36,000 I believe it is for and then $4,000 for like expenses of travel and such.
Okay, what do you think?
I think this is good.
I think it was great. I learned so much, and I appreciate
pit bulls,
it.
Jason?
No, you guys were great.
David Adams called us pit bulls.
We can be. Well, I mean, there's a difference between attacking and just being, curious. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are just curious.
Yeah.
I was in journalism for 15 years, not with the TV side. Having the camera on me is a little bit different.
Yeah.
I'm used to the radio side, but I always appreciate it and do now. If somebody has a question, that's why I tell people even in the office now, if you have a question on something, call. We will get you an answer.
Right.
It's better for somebody to have more information than it is to guess and assume.
And create their own create their own stories, I tend to do that a lot.
If all you have to do is pick up a phone and ask a question, it can be so much easier, and it might be something we don't even think of, and then we go and look it up to make sure that we know. But we would certainly rather answer questions like this than just have people kind of hearing things out there on their own and saying, well, I think it's that way.
Right.
No, check it out.
And that's kind of where we were last week, and that's why we're like, you know what, we're gonna do that work for everybody else. So all they have to do is tune in and listen to our questions. And of course, if anything that we've discussed here today has brought up questions from you, like Jason said, give them a call. The information is there, and it's for everybody to know and to understand, right? So I think this cleared it up a little bit more for me, and I'm hoping for Britt as well. We really appreciate your time and your explanations.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and you did fill those shoes wonderfully, I will say.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So as our second guest, we thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
both.
That does it for today's Coffee Talk. We'll catch you back here next time.
Tower Pizza and Mexican offers a full menu of pizza, wings, and Mexican favorites. Try the shrimp tacos, fajitas, or a Jeff's special pizza. Extra sauce, pepperoni, sausage, ham, and mushrooms, all on their homemade crust. Tower Pizza and Mexican, 2701 Broadway, Quincy.
Are you looking for the perfect venue for your next special event? Check out Utopia Event Center. Utopia has a large banquet room and an awesome bar area, perfect for anything from birthday parties to formal corporate meetings. It also offers a photo booth, stage for a DJ or a live band, and a fully stocked bar, all for only $300. Check us out at utopiaeventcenter.com or call Barn at 217-430-6559 for more information. Utopia Event Center, 900 North 12th Street in Quincy.
Kelly's has been a fun place to eat and drink in Quincy since 1982. A fun and friendly atmosphere, food with flavor, homemade cinnamon rolls, and famous cheese soup, the best menu in town. Kelly's, 2902 Broadway, Quincy.
Welcome to the Abbey, a Quincy tradition. With 6 big screens, a new larger kitchen, and now more seating capacity, the Abbey is the place to be before, during, and after the big game. Come enjoy fan favorite appetizers, steaks, burgers, and a variety of daily food and drink specials. Can't join us? Carryout is available too. Now with a convenient drive-up window to better serve you. 1736 Spring in Quincy. Opens at 3 p.m. Tuesday through Sunday. Come join all your friends at the Abbey, a Quincy tradition.
Muddy River News. Our home, our news.